As Americans' need for space on the road grows, sometimes they find an SUV a bit too big. But a sedan, well, that's too small. Enter the CUV, or crossover utility vehicle, a sort of place halfway between a car and an SUV. From 2009 to 2015, Toyota's entry into this segment was called the Venza. But sales never really caught on. Now, Toyota has revived the nameplate as a hybrid only. And it just so happens to have very similar dimensions to the RAV4. So let's take a look at some of the differences.
Compared with the RAV4, this is a much sleeker, much more refined kind of styling and design. The RAV4 is kind of chunky, a little bit boxy. This is much sleeker, much smoother. And in fact, I was loading some tires into it the other day and somebody said, "Nice Jaguar." In fact, from this 3/4 view at the rear end, I can kind of see what people are talking about, because it does have this styling where the rear window comes down and it sort of forms this crease in the body line which meets with the taillight, and it gives it a little bit of a Jaguar kind of look and feel. Toyota has loaded this up with all kinds of tech that comes standard even on the base model. This has a power liftgate, which is standard. It has a 7-inch multi-information display in the dashboard, which is standard. On the dash, you have an 8-inch display for your infotainment system. Finally, it comes standard with Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, and Amazon Alexa. Personally, when I'm driving down the freeway at 80 miles an hour, I like to look up recipes for chocolate cake. So this is a little bit taller than a car. It rides a little bit higher than a car, but not as high as a big full-size SUV. And overall, the cabin space, the overall experience of driving it is really much more car-like than SUV-like. So the whole emphasis here is really on refinement. If you've seen the Toyota Harrier from overseas, this is very much the Harrier in US form. Here in the US and Canada, this comes in hybrid only. In terms of the styling, Toyota seems to be moving towards this corporate look with the headlights, where you have these signature elements, these running lights that sort of go forward like this. There's 2 of them. You can see these also in the Toyota Corolla. And also what I'm seeing in Toyota lately is the styling signature, where you have these character lines that kind of come down and they all point towards the front of the nose, kind of culminating in the Toyota logo. This, of course, is a little bit of an electrified, sort of an EV look that Toyota also has as part of their signature. The grille is quite big. Again, Toyota's doing a lot of these big grills, but it's not as prominent as it is in some other vehicles. It's black, and you've got a multitude of parking sensors, which is quite nice when you're trying to park the car in a tight space. Overall, the look is quite sleek. It's quite stylish. There's no sharp edges. There's a lot of interesting character lines that kind of flow seamlessly. And I'm not sure if I think it's a great looking vehicle, but it certainly is smooth and kind of unobtrusive in a way. I think overall it's an attractive looking CUV. And again, if you like more of a car-like experience, I think this is going to speak to you. Now, this is a very typical Toyota in terms of the interior and the fit and finish. Everything fits really well. You've got real stitching along here. This is soft touch. You've got soft touch on the doors here and here. You've got a nice finish by the control switches on the door for the windows. Even this is pretty soft touch too. The steering wheel is nicely wrapped with leather. This is the limited trim, and the gauge cluster is big. It's easy to see. You've got a 7-inch multi-information display right ahead of you, and you have this 12.3-inch massive tablet over here, which absolutely dominates the interior experience. This is in the limited edition. Normally you get an 8-inch tablet. I'm not a big fan personally of the iPad tablet on the dash thing. Toyota's doing it. A lot of manufacturers are doing it. Some are moving away from it. I don't think it looks that good, but you've really got to deal with this on a day-to-day basis, because this is one of your main interfaces, your primary interface to operating the vehicle. It does have a heads-up display, which is kind of cool on a vehicle of this class. It's pretty bright, it's easy to read, except if you're wearing sunglasses, which are polarized, in which case you really can't see it, but that's a problem with pretty much every heads-up display on the market right now. In terms of Toyota products and luxury, this is a little bit more upscale than I think most typical Toyota products are. This feels like it's gone about a third or maybe a quarter of the way towards Lexus in terms of just the overall driving experience and the look and feel of the cabin, and even the exterior. Now, one thing that Toyota has done is they have moved away from physical knobs on the heating and ventilation and the whole infotainment system. So now you have this glossy black piano plastic, which shows a ton of fingerprints. And when you're driving, if you want to change the temperature, you've got to like touch this thing, but you have to look at it because it doesn't give you any haptic feedback at all. Same thing for the fan. You've got to touch it. Same thing for the volume control. You've got to touch it, but it doesn't give you any feedback. So when you're driving, it's not really that great, although you can use the controls on the steering wheel, which are quite good. So overall, I'm not really a big fan of it. I know it's sort of trendy right now, but it is just not the easiest to use. I really, really prefer dials and knobs. That's just the way I like to roll. You do get 2 USB ports up here. One of them you can use for Apple CarPlay. I can plug in my phone. And the one thing I don't like is there's no really good place to put your phone. You can kind of put it here, but it sort of falls all over the place. There's no good place to rest it. It does have a wireless charger, so if you don't want to use Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, you can put it in the charging spot there, but it's really not the most convenient spot to have your phone. I think it could be just done a little bit better. You were at the McLaren dealership and you're looking at the 720S and you're thinking to yourself, man, I like this car, but I don't want to spend $9,000 on the sunroof that blacks out when you hit a button. Well, if you're in luck, you want to take your friends to the beach, you can buy the Venza, and for only $1,400, you can hit this button and get the same effect as the McLaren. So really, this is just like driving a budget McLaren. So the back seat has a ton of room. I got a lot of headroom here, even with the sunroof. I got lots of knee room. I could put the front seat way back. If someone over here was like over 6 foot tall, this would not be an issue. Lots of seat padding, very comfortable. I could spend a lot of time back here, actually. You've got 2 vents to direct the airflow. There's 2 USB ports in the back, and overall it's pretty nice space. Actually, this folds down 60/42, so you can put a lot of extra stuff here. Let's take a look at the cargo hatch. On the Limited, you have this light bar that goes all the way across the back. You've also got this LED taillight up here too that goes all the way across the back. Kind of a nice look. Let's take a look at the cargo space. The power hatch is a little bit on the slow side for my taste, but there is a lot of cargo space back here. You got 28.8 cubic feet with the rear seats up. You put them down, you got a little bit more than 55. That is just 2 cubic feet short of the RAV4. This has actually got the same wheelbase as the RAV4, but this is just a little bit longer. One of the first things that I noticed when I'm driving it, it is pretty quiet actually. Everything seems to be really well sealed. There's a lot of insulation and probably in the roof structure too, so they've really focused on reducing a lot of noise in the cabin, especially from tire noise and impact harshness, and just overall road noise is pretty low in this vehicle, which is kind of nice. They're definitely focusing on refinement. The engine, so in terms of the responsiveness of this hybrid system, it is actually fairly responsive. It has 219 horsepower combined, and that's not bad for a vehicle of this class in terms of a hybrid. I've been getting about 39, 40 miles a gallon, which is pretty good in mixed use driving. So overall, as you can tell, it's pretty quiet in here. Now when I mash the throttle, you can tell it gets a little bit noisier now. I'm just hitting the brakes kind of hard here too. In terms of the braking performance, some hybrids tend to have a really weird brake feel where you're using the regenerative braking and the pedal feel just doesn't feel quite natural. This actually Toyota has done a very good job of kind of making the pedal feel a little bit more. In fact, it's quite natural feeling. I think you probably wouldn't notice it at all. Impact harshness is quite good. So this isn't the smoothest road in the world. I mean, this stretch here is pretty smooth, but it does soak up bumps pretty decently. Now, in terms of the overall ride quality, it is not the smoothest Toyota product around. It's certainly not harsh by any means. There's really not much harshness, but there is just a little bit of suspension stiffness in there, or in here. And I think what happens, I think the reason behind that is when you load it up with passengers and cargo, the ride quality actually improves a little bit. So just being solo here myself, it's not bad at all by any stretch of the imagination, but it just has a little bit of firmness that you can kind of feel, and it's definitely not as soft as a Camry, for example, and certainly not as soft as any kind of Lexus. So it's just a little bit more sort of utilitarian. The crossover marketplace is an interesting place. It sort of takes the best of a car and melds it with an SUV, and you get something like this. So there's a lot of competition here too. You've got the Honda CR-V hybrid, which is about $2,000 less across the board. Now, this is definitely a little bit quieter. I think the infotainment system is a little bit better, even though I'm not a huge fan, but you should definitely look at the Honda as well. It's got a lot of refinement, a lot of nice technology in there too. This is just a little bit of a newer offering. My name is Eric. I'm on Instagram, and I just started a TikTok, and I will see you in the next car review. Oh yeah. Vape Nation, baby.